certainly with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, February 15th, with news from Arkansas. I know this is supposed to be Arkansas-centric, but we still do live in the United States of America, otherwise known as the home led by the Apprentice President, and his reality TV show continues unabated. It's created a tremendous amount of interest in the news, I have to say. Been kind of a rejuvenating factor for American journalism, and that's not a bad thing, except that the stories are so bad so often. Donald Trump, you may know, met today with Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of Israel. Is the U.S. still behind the two-state solution to the Middle East problems? Is it not? Questions remain. Again, Donald Trump is hard to pin down in a cohesive kind of way. It looks like he's in trouble with a cabinet appointee, Andrew Puzder, the fast food king from Hardee's hamburger chain. A number of Republicans oppose that nomination. It looks like it's not going to go through. Republicans are urging Trump to bring it down. Trump doesn't like to be a loser. We don't yet know how that's going to turn out. He's a man who hates labor, terrible labor secretary appointee, and he's also had a problem on paying taxes on a housekeeper, so he's not a great guy for the job. Elsewhere, the big story remains is Russia, and what did Trump know and when did he know it about communications by his staff and his former national security leader before he took office as president with Russia in their efforts to sabotage Hillary Clinton's run for the presidency. More and more, there's serious questions that require a thorough and complete and open bipartisan investigation. So far, the Republican Party doesn't seem willing to grant that, but there is some belief in the Republican Party, which used to be not friendly to Russia, that this issue needs to be cleared up. Let's hope. Let's move on to the Arkansas legislature. A Senate committee today had almost 2 hours of debate on Representative Charlie Collins' bill that would require all state universities to allow staff members with concealed carry permits to carry those weapons on campus. None of the colleges want this. Only the NRA and gun-toting Arkansas legislators seem to like the idea, but the bill came out of committee today with only one negative vote, that from Senator Will Bond of Little Rock. There were a number of opponents of the bill, including a mother's group for common sense gun laws. None of that prevailed. There were no real good answers to questions about how police are to distinguish between good guys and bad guys. No answer to studies that show more guns on campus don't create safer campuses, but guns are sacred in Arkansas, and as expected, the bill came out of committee. It's already passed the House. It needs only a Senate vote to move into law. The governor himself has said he has reservations about this bill, but I doubt he'll veto it if it passes the legislature, because there'll be an easy vote to override his veto. The other big news in Arkansas was the introduction late yesterday of a shell bill, which means it doesn't have all its specifics written down yet, but it's a bathroom bill. It will require people to use public restroom facilities that comport with the way they were born, not with what they may identify with sexually now. It is probably worth noting that sometimes gender is indeterminate at birth in a very small number, but a real number of cases. This is a discriminatory kind of action. It arises out of unfounded fears that somehow transgender people present some kind of threat by using the restrooms that comport with the identity they've adopted. I have a lot of experience with this, and I think the senators who sponsored this bill would have a hard time identifying what the gender is of some people they meet on the street, but that's not really on their mind. I've asked them to answer some questions about this. They say they will eventually. I hope we'll have that discussion before this bill is over with. I hope the bill goes away quietly. It's another thing that the governor, though conservative and not particularly friendly to LGBT causes, has said the state doesn't need. It's caused other states problems and economic reprisals when they've adopted such things. Arkansas congressmen say they will meet constituents, at least to some degree. U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, who got national criticism for closing his office to protesters' questions, now will have a town hall meeting. It'll be next week in Springdale, which is Republican-friendly territory. I'm sure he's hard at work working to pack the hall with friends of his, but there'll be some people who will turn out and try and ask the senator questions. Meanwhile, French Hill, the congressman from Little Rock, Tom Cotton won't get close to Little Rock for a public meeting, of course, given the prevailing political sentiment here. But anyway, French Hill is going to have what he calls a teletown hall tonight, 7 p.m. You can go to the Arkansas blog to get the phone number and the password to be allowed to listen in, not necessarily to answer questions. They have screeners on these things, and my experience is that tough questions don't get through very often, but French Hill will at least allow some telephone questioning. He still has not scheduled any date to meet his constituents in public in any form or fashion. Late yesterday afternoon, the Arkansas Senate gave its approval to a constitutional amendment for so-called tort reform. That is, it would limit severely damages and damage lawsuits for medical malpractice and nursing home abuse, for example. Also limit attorneys' fees where these laws have been passed elsewhere. They tend to put an end to meaningful lawsuits over abuse and neglect. And the result generally is a decline in patient care in places like nursing homes. They no longer have to worry about lawsuits. They don't worry so much about how well they take care of patients. Putting a cap of value on a human life seems an awfully cruel thing, but in the name of corporate profits, Arkansas legislature, at least the Arkansas Senate, seems to be in line behind that. The worst part of this amendment, really beyond the damages limit, is that it strips the Arkansas Supreme Court of court rulemaking authority. It puts court rulemaking authority under the strict control of the legislature. Chief Justice Dan Kemp testified against the bill for that reason yesterday, at least that part of the constitutional amendment. It didn't carry much water. The House of Representatives will yet to decide on one of its own amendments. It's unclear yet what the House is going to reach a consensus on. Maybe they'll come back with a somewhat less draconian amendment on damage lawsuits and court control, we could hope, but that doesn't seem to be the spirit of the day out there, I have to say. And finally, I mentioned transgender people. I got a wonderful letter today from a former co-worker at the Times who's a transgender male, and he describes his difficult transition over a period of years, including being a mother of 2 children and is now a man. And he writes the letter not so much for sympathy for himself, he's okay now, but to give some comfort to people who are in the shadows today and people who are fearful today, young people today who haven't been through what he's been through. I recommend you go to Arkansas blog and take a look at it. It's a moving piece, I think, and it gives a personal dimension to a story that we're about to embark on a very divisive debate about. Finally, I'm Max Brantley. I'll try to be back tomorrow if the spirit's willing. In the meanwhile, persist.